Let's get down to business now. And the Prime Minister leading the news today, he addressed the Munich Security Conference. He said that's where the UK needs deeper links with the EU and Europe must be ready to fight.
Europe, we must stand on our own 2 feet. Now that means being bolder. It means putting away petty politics and short-term concerns. It means acting together to build a stronger Europe and a more European NATO. Now, we are not the Britain of the Brexit years anymore.
Well, he also announced a significant deployment of British warships in the North Atlantic. Here's what he had to say.
That the UK will deploy our carrier strike group to the North Atlantic and the High North this year, led by HMS Prince of Wales, operating alongside the US, Canada and other NATO allies.
Delighted to speak now to our GB News chief political correspondent, Catherine Forster, today on this one. Catherine, you've been there. The thing that gets me, he was better than I thought he would be, much better. How did you think his performance went down?
Well, I think it went down very well. We are in Munich, in the heart of Europe. And of course, we had a pretty bumpy ride, didn't we, around the time of Brexit. But our Prime Minister really wants to build bridges. And so a lot of warmth between him and the EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. I think they have realised, Europe collectively, that Russia is on their doorstep. We've got Zelensky, I think Zelensky's just finished speaking now, but Zelensky has been speaking earlier and warnings that Russia will rearm and could go after a NATO country in the next 3 or 4 years. And also the realisation that we just cannot depend on America, partly because Donald Trump is changeable and we just don't know if he would come to our defence. He's been pretty tepid about defending Ukraine. Only today he said that Zelensky's got to make a deal and that Russia wants to do that. We haven't seen much evidence that that's really the case, but also that we simply haven't been paying our way. This is something that the US president has been talking about for many years, telling us to pay up, and finally, Europe is getting the message and is beginning to do that. So the Prime Minister talked about the fact that, we live in a world where war...
Catherine, let me ask you about Starmer himself. I got the impression then, the longer I listened to him, he was simply speaking on behalf of Trump. It was like as if Trump wrote a lot of that speech and he was delivering the messages that Trump wanted.
Well, look, they cannot afford to upset the US president. They have been firm that Greenland is not for sale.
There's nothing more important than keeping you and your loved ones safe online. With so many VPN options available, choosing the right one can be pretty daunting. And with their Valentine's Day sale, this video's sponsor, ExpressVPN, is making the choice easier for GB News viewers. It's the easiest way to stay safe online, protect your money, and save big for less than £2 a month. Click the link in the video's description or scan the QR code today.
But they have to convince Donald Trump that we can look after our own defence and that we're not always going to sort of come depending on America like some sort of little brother hanging on America's coattails. So America, is the most powerful country on earth, and we have to cooperate with them. Now, he's saying that we've had over-dependence in the past and now we need interdependence, that we need a more balanced relationship. But look, at the beginning of this conference, the logo for this is an elephant with bits of it taken out, and it talks about being in an era of destruction, and also that we're now in a world of wrecking ball politics. So the reality is we've got these big powers Russia, China, the United States, and Europe in the middle, all these different countries. We're not in the EU, so the Prime Minister's being very clear that we are going to have to get closer to Europe, not rejoining the EU, but closer links with Europe. And he's talking about things like defence and saying everybody's making different jets, there's no consistency.
But Catherine, he wasn't getting closer to some of the political parties in this country. I mean, using an international stage to launch attacks on Reform and the Green Party. What was all that about?
Yes, I must admit I was quite surprised when I got up this morning and saw the front page of the Times who led with that. It was a bit at the very end of the speech, but I think it was significant that he's chosen to say that on an international stage, but it's a message to the domestic audience, and I think it's a sign that he's really, really worried. He knows he's in an incredibly weak position. There's various cabinet ministers want his job while pretending that they don't want his job. There's a crucial by-election in just a couple of weeks, the local elections, which are likely to be a bloodbath for Labour, and so he is wanting to send a message back home, which is don't go to Reform, don't go to the Greens, because Labour's vote's being eaten alive on both sides, because he's saying that they will be soft on Russia and weak on NATO. Now, Nigel Farage would said, hey, we were talking about upping defence spending a lot faster than you have, but that is a message that they will want to play. But I think what it speaks of is his very weak position at home, and that is something that is cutting through here, because leaders know what's going on in the UK and they hear these promises, but they're not quite sure whether he's going to be around to deliver them.
Catherine, thank you very much indeed for that. We're going to talk again later in the programme, but I'll say goodbye to you just for the moment. And let's speak to a man who I always enjoy talking to, the former Mayor of Middlesbrough, Andy Preston, to get his take on this. Andy, we started talking about local politics there. There he was on that international stage. How do you think he came across?
Eamonn, good afternoon. Happy Valentine's Day. I think that Starmer came across really well. He's doing a good job. He's on the ropes here. I've never seen anybody so close to being finished politically, but somehow clinging on. And he's coming out strong there. You know what he's doing, Eamonn? He's ticking all the boxes. He is showing international strength. And I think that he's showing a bridge between the USA and Europe. He seems to be placating Trump, saying all of the right things to keep the Americans happy, but indicating a desire to get closer to Europe. And Eamonn, that closeness with Europe is really valuable to him domestically, because Labour has lost a lot of votes, a lot of support, but the rump of their support is still largely pro-European. And where they've leaked support to the Greens want to rejoin the EU. And where they leak any votes to the Lib Dems have an implicit agenda to rejoin the EU too. So what he's doing, he's treading a tightrope pretty well, where he's showing friendliness, openness and warmth to Europe without indicating a rejoining of the EU.
I hear what you're saying there. I was surprised, bearing in mind the week that he had. My goodness me, what a stressful, what a busy week. But he was really on it today, wasn't he?
I think he was. He's coming across really well. There have been a number of prime ministers, presidents and renowned politicians who've been quite weak at home, you know, but somehow get a bit stronger internationally. I think that Starmer's Trump relationship was overblown and overstated, but he seems to be good at delivering the right words at the right time sometimes. So I think he's doing a good job, Eamonn. I think he's coming across as statesmanlike. And as I say, he's playing it quite cannily. I know you mentioned earlier that he was slagging off or using the platform to be critical of Reform and the Greens, but I think that's quite smart. That's where two places he's leaking lots of votes to. We're heading towards May elections, of course, and that's what he's scared of. So I think he's probably ticking a lot of boxes. If he was at 1 out of 10 in terms of energy and power last week, he's probably ticked up to 2.5, 3. Let's see if he can last a bit longer.
Yeah. But Andy, the scary thing, right? So he's basically saying that Russia is going to come over the Arctic Circle, China probably behind them. All of that's up for grabs. Do you believe that? I don't believe that. You see, I don't believe that. I think that's just scaremongering.
I honestly don't know. I think, the truth is, the old cliche is that if you want peace, you have to prepare for war. I think you have to prepare for the worst. And I think sometimes you will overstate risks. If you think a potential foe is even considering something, never mind committing to it, I think if you raise it, it lets them know that you're on it and ready and potentially waiting for trouble. We're in an extraordinarily unprecedented time, Eamon. Obviously, we know that we've got wars springing up and conflicts arising all of the time. And without being too alarmist, the arrival of AI, which is about to occur in the massive way that's been predicted for some time, the disruption that will cause, the unsettlement that will cause, will destabilize people, and who knows what difference it will make to international trade and peace and trading relationships. So we're heading into a really unusual and fraught time, I fear, and he's coming across pretty well, pretty statesmanlike.
And I always appreciate your analysis of things. Thank you very much indeed. We'll ask people, you've listened to what Andy's had to say, and you can have your say. That's what it's all about, gbnews.com/your say.